Okay. Everyone is nice and full, ready to fall asleep. My name's Shari Gearheard, and I'll be the moderator for this next session, Regional Socio-Economic Development and its Gendered Impacts. I'm with the University of Colorado. I'm a geographer and a research scientist, but I actually live full-time in Arctic Canada in a very small community on Baffin Island, and I'm speaking in the next session, so I'll talk a little bit more then. This panel is actually bigger than the last one. We have 6 instead of 5, so I've been asked to keep it moving, and I'll do only very brief introductions of the speakers. But in the program online, you can actually read more about each speaker, so if you're looking for more of a biography, you can find it there. So we're going to move right into our first talk, Gender, Entrepreneurship, and Regional Development. Elisabet Ljunggren from Nordland Research Institute in Boulder, Norway. She's a research professor there with expertise in the gendered aspects of entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, dear everyone. Thank you for the invitation to participate at the conference. I'm a research professor on gender and entrepreneurship at Nordland Research Institute in the northern part of Norway. We are actually above the Arctic Circle. And I would like to share some research-based thoughts on gendered entrepreneurship and gendered regional development from an industry or business perspective. I might also add that when I'm thinking of regional development, rurality is an important part of that. So, firstly, it's a widely shared assumption that entrepreneurship and innovation are sources for wealth creation, not only for entrepreneurs or capitalists, but also for society, for instance, by the creation of employment. Secondly, entrepreneurship in itself is a complex social phenomenon involving the entrepreneurs, which are men or women, or startup teams, which are men and women. It involves the entrepreneurs' households, which are often missed out in research, but I'm particularly interested in. It's also about creating business organization and viable business models. It's about markets, which consist of humans. And it's about different types of capitals, for instance, human capital, education, which we all know is strongly gender segregated, in the Nordic countries at least. Young girls choose education that gives them jobs in the public sector, while young men choose education giving them jobs in the private sector, and consequently a shorter way to entrepreneurship, to the market. And entrepreneurship is indeed a gendered phenomenon, with more men than women engaged, and you all know that trade and industry is a male domain. For instance, by remembering the 40% quota of women in public listed companies in Norway and what that reactions that gained. Or you might look at the division of wealth, the richest lists in the finance newspapers. How many women do you find there? Most oftenly, entrepreneurship is understood as new business formation, and that is what I stick to know, but you can also talk about innovation, like new products, new services, or you can talk about social entrepreneurship, indigenous entrepreneurship, or immigrant entrepreneurship, which I think also should be mentioned in the circumpolar context. The picture here is from a tourism business outside Boulder in Saltstraumen, which is the strongest maltström in the world. And a woman who started her Stone Age business, where they serve Stone Age food and give knowledge about how and what they lived of in the Stone Age, because it was a Stone Age settlement there. So, facts and figures, returning to entrepreneurship, which is a source, or at least can be a source for employment, also in rural regions. These are figures from the GEM studies, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitoring, including 67 economies in the world. And unfortunately, Iceland is not longer joining GEM, and frankly say I'm not quite sure about Canada. But Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Russia have currently engaged in the GEM studies. And this gives some indications on the total entrepreneurial activity, TEA, in the population aged 18 to 64. A large sample of persons are called and asked whether they currently are involved in trying to start a business or recently have started a business. And you can see the numbers here for female and males in Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Russia. And the gender division is clear in these numbers. With Norway having the largest difference between women and men, and Russia having the lowest difference. The next column, established business ownership. These are people running a business older than 3.5 years. And we can see that the Russian men score very high on this. No, sorry, the Finnish men score high on this with 12% of the adult population of men in Finland being self-employed, and with only 2% of Russian men being self-employed. And that equals Russian women and Danish women. So it's a potential, and this potential is very highly on the political agenda when it comes to entrepreneurship. One wants to engage and rise the number of people getting into entrepreneurship. It's of course interesting to know whether this entrepreneurial activity happens in urban or rural areas, and I think it's also important to consider whether this entrepreneurial engagement is giving empowerment to the people getting into it. It's mostly always looking at the positive ways of entrepreneurship or being self-employed, but it obviously has some downsides as well, which is not often discussed. So, and it's my firm belief that regional development is gendered as well. When you get to regional development and looking from a business perspective, you have these regional innovation systems, which are the cornerstones of the development. And the cornerstones, the regional innovation system, consist of businesses, of course, public sector, and their means to promote entrepreneurship, innovation, R&D, and R&D institutions. I also would like you to take a look at the picture with Tove Åland. She's a quite well-known female entrepreneur from the Lofoten Islands, where she's running, together with her family, a farm. They have a cheese factory, they're growing herbs, they're having a cafe. So, guess who are participating in these regional innovation systems? Would Tove Åland, who is within agriculture and tourism, be regarded as a business who is a part of a regional innovation system? No, it's the wrong business, it's the wrong industry. These regional innovation systems often consist of the male-dominated industries. And this I know because we have done research on that in Norway, and they have done in Sweden as well. So you need to take that into account when you want to talk about regional development and getting women to become more active. I'll get back to that. Further on, rurality, employment opportunities, And societal services such as kindergarten, school, nursing home, and physical infrastructure is, of course, also a part of regional development. Who use public transportation? Buses, women and children. So how do they put up buses that are fitting to their needs? Who work in kindergarten, schools, and nursing home? And who are dependent on these places to function if they're going to engage in self-employment or being employed? You know the answer. Further on, in rural areas, market opportunities can be scarce if you target the local market. But if you are within tourism and experience industry, it might look different. There are also what we in Norway call non-functional markets, for instance, in the financial market. So accessing financing business and business growth, at least in Norway, it's acknowledged that this is not functioning in rural places. So we have the system of Innovation Norway, where one should have easier access to money to grow your businesses. I don't know whether it's functioning yet because their focus shifts from rural to urban. But it's important to have such systems put in use to adjust the non-functional financial markets we have found in the research we have done. Also, quality of life is important for people, and it's not measured in monetary terms, but it's a part to think of, and it's often lifted when people talking about becoming self-employed and getting more control over their lives. So, what to do if to promote regional development and include women? Firstly, I strongly believe, and research suggests, that one should both mainstream gender equality in business and regional development policies and means, and you should give women special attention, such as women quotas for public business grants, or maternity leave for self-employed women. Then, it's of course to maintain public services, kindergarten, school, etc. in rural areas, which will enable women to work on or become self-employed. It's about, and it has been raised earlier today, the needs to try to get boys to become nursery school teachers and to get girls to become joiners, and open up children's minds on possibilities. It's very narrow the way boys and girls are taught on what occupations they can have, and it's even narrower for girls. Then it's about entrepreneurial training for young people. I strongly believe that one should continue this entrepreneurial training for young people. Research is somewhat inconsistent, but it doesn't hurt to get to know what self-employment means. Then, support growth of women-owned businesses. And it's a lot about attitudes and financing growth. I did some entrepreneurial training for women in Russia ages ago, and these Russian female entrepreneurs, they had growth ambitions. We were a bit struck by that, so it was very positive. But financing their businesses was hard, and I guess it's still hard in Russia. But it's the same all over. The Arctic countries, I believe. And then one need to support industry where women start businesses, like Tove Åland. You have to support businesses within tourism and experience industries, for instance. Also galleries, shops. If you look at Akureyri here as a tourism destination, it's part of the totality of that destination. You need to have different types of shops which attract people, or galleries and other types and of services, and these are often neglected when you're developing rural communities. I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabet, for your presentation. Just a reminder that we're going to hold questions until the end. We'll have our three main speakers. Then we have three panelists who will join us up here for some short comments, and then we'll take questions and discussion with the audience. So our second speaker is Kriss Rokkan Iversen. She's with the knowledge-based company SALT, S-A-L-T, based in Lofoten, Norway. SALT does research, consultancy, and outreach services related to the ocean and coastal community. So please welcome Kriss Iversen.
Just a second, because he's helping me to switch to the Mac. So. But I could start off by saying that I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. And my name is Kriss Rokkan Iversen, and I'm 37 years old. I have a child, and I'm a single mom. And I come from a part of Northern Norway where there's not many indigenous people, but we also live very close to the nature and the natural resources. And
Can I use the sound of the video?
yeah, I think I'll just keep it. And I'm not a technical person, so... Yes. Okay, so before I start to talk about SALT and our thoughts about owning the Arctic future when gender becomes a crucial factor, I just want to say a few things, because I will make some comments or say some things that could be provocative, which is good, I think, but at the same time, a short presentation like this is not long enough to really go into the depth on the complexity of a lot of the issues I'm discussing. So I firstly want to say that I have very deeply rooted respect for all types of competence, whether it's traditional, practical, inherited, or formal. And I think that's something to remember as I go along in my presentation. So I will use my highly appreciated time with you all here today in Akureyri to focus on one question: how do you own the future? That is, of course, not a very simple question. That's a complex question with a diversity of answers. But for me, the answer lies in the intersection between being given the opportunity while taking the responsibility. In this perspective, central incentives for ownership of future development in northern communities are balanced demography, differentiated job markets, and human resources with competence for an Arctic future. And I will not be able to give a simple answer to such a complex question, of course. But in the following, I will share my experience with establishing a knowledge-based company, SALT, in Lofoten in Northern Norway. And maybe can the story about SALT give some hints on how northern communities could acquire stronger tools in their quest for ownership to the Arctic future. So, I was born and raised at 68 degrees north in the Lofoten archipelago, where rich marine resources and traditional fisheries has been the central pillars of the community for much more than 1,000 years. And spending the 21st years of my life on a narrow line between steep mountains and a wild ocean deeply colored my personality. And my lifelong interest in the marine environment first led to a master's degree and then a PhD on marine ecosystems. And during my studies, I was involved in a lot of boards, organizations, and recruitment work. And this combination, it nurtured my growing interest in building projects and taking social responsibility. And this combination surprisingly led my personal and my professional life into a direction that brought me home to my ancestors' harbor. A direction that was more interesting and rewarding than I could ever imagine, and a direction that forced me to reflect on the impact that gender and competence will have on the Arctic future. To tell the SALT story, I will start out by talking about the North in a knowledge perspective, since this makes the fundament of the SALT project. And when I am addressing the knowledge situation in the North, I will take on a Northern Norwegian angle to this matter. When we look to Northern Norway, we see a region with huge natural resources, which supports both traditional industries like fisheries, but also new knowledge-demanding industries like aquaculture, oil and gas, renewable energy, tourism, you name it. Northern Norway should therefore have a significant possibility to take the lead in a productive future in the north. Unfortunately, there is a central and complex elephant in the future room of Northern Norway. This elephant weighs around 1.4 kilos, and with the right training, it represents a unique source of obtaining and analyzing information, as well as creating new ideas and innovative solutions. I'm obviously thinking about the human brain, and in the current perspective, I'm thinking about trained brains in particular. The future development of traditional industries in the north, as well as the emerging new industries, demands competent personnel. That is a fact. In this picture, the population in Northern Norway is falling behind when it comes to taking part of the socio-economic development in its own region. And that's a challenge. The population in Northern Norway represents a total brain volume of 620 tons. That's giving a substantial potential for trained brains. The challenge is, however, the educational level of the population. This figure, produced by the National Institute of Public Health in Norway, shows the different levels or the percentage of the population that has what is qualifying for a low educational level. And the darkest part is the highest part of the population. So that in Northern Norway, there's an average of 35 to 40% of the population that qualifies for a low educational level, which means that you haven't graduated from high school. And the concerns related to the educational level in Northern Norway increases when the data also show that in the county of Nordland and the county of Finnmark, only 3.5% of the population has a degree from a university college or a university. The Northern Norwegian statistics on both low and high educational levels are considerably lower than the mean levels for Norway. If you zoom in on Lofoten, you will find the similar patterns. It's in Norwegian, but the closest to me is Norway, then it's two big cities in Northern Norway, and then it's Rokkan, the municipality where I live in Lofoten. And the relative proportion of the population representing a low educational level is higher in my own municipality, Rokkan, than within the Norwegian population overall. And at the same time, the percentage of the population possessing education from a university college or university is lower. And this pattern also holds when comparing the population in Lofoten with the population in Northern Norwegian cities like Boulder and Tromsø. In Northern Norway, as in many communities across the Arctic, gender is becoming a crucial factor influencing central incentives such as balanced demography, differentiated job markets, and human resources with competence for the Arctic future. While the growing sectors are traditionally male-dominated, the women are taking the lead when it comes to acquiring university degrees. Educational statistics from Norway show that it is the women who represents the highest educational level. And here, for once, that's like it's an exception from the rule. It is not the red is the males, and then the yellow or orange part is the women. And it starts with the country, it goes from urban to rural upwards. So this trend is increasing when moving from urban to rural areas. And Northern Norway represents a high degree of rural areas. And in fact, in Northern Norway, there is 6 to 11% more women than men graduating from university colleges or universities. How we make the northern communities attractive for competent women is therefore highly relevant when discussing ownership to the Arctic future. It is central to remember that these trends could be modified by the fact that a considerable volume of young Northern Norwegians is currently studying at a university college or university. As an example, Lofoten is exporting a high relative proportion of their population to academic studies. In the future, this could impact both the educational level in Lofoten as well as in Northern Norway. If we are able to offer the competent youth interesting jobs that they want to have in the northern communities like Lofoten, and while bearing in mind that a considerable amount of such job prospects should be embracing educated women. SALT is the story about how 2 women invested their PhDs and engagement in a small community far away from universities and R&D facilities. On a sea voyage in northern Norway, in the middle of my PhD work, I met Kjersti Eline Tønnesen-Busch, and we immediately discovered that we share the same ambitions on contributing to the northern future through knowledge. Together, we decided that our solution for making a difference was to allocate our joint passion for the ocean, coastal communities, and northern wealth creation closer to the marine resources. And in 2010, we therefore established the knowledge-based company SALT, or SALT, in Svolvær, Lofoten, together with Aquaplan IBA. Through our first row perspective on marine resources and industry, we were determined that SALT should secure local ownership of knowledge central to the blue future in the north. SALT is providing services on research, consultancy, and outreach related to the ocean, marine resources, and coastal communities to both public and private customers nationwide and abroad. And SALT will contribute to the coastal future from sea urchins to human resources, because the future of the coast in northern Norway and in the north is our own. Today, SALT has 5 highly educated young women and men in Lofoten, and our continuously expanding project portfolio is securing ownership to knowledge of marine possibilities and challenges, as well as a yearly turnover of 4.5 million Norwegian kroner. SALT knowledge is attractive not in spite of, but because of our location in the northern periphery. The combination of high formal competence and local perspective is found highly valuable in a knowledge-based market. We bring formal, practical, and inherited knowledge together and serve as a meeting point for science, industry, and politics. Our SALT recipe could therefore be of interest also for other educated women and men throughout the Arctic. As founders of SALT, Kjersti and I believe that the establishment and utilization of a combination of formal, practical, and inherited knowledge within northern communities is a way towards greater ownership of the future. In this perspective, we believe that knowledge-based jobs in both public and private sector will hold a key position in the future development of northern settlements. We believe that small knowledge-based companies like SALT could provide new possibilities, reinforcing a differentiated job market, attracting both women and men with competence equally relevant for the Arctic future. Could our SALT experience hint on how northern communities could take responsibility for the future by transforming gendered challenges into new possibilities? For us, the answer is yes, because we believe that part of the answer to the complex question on how you own the future is to secure ownership to knowledge, whether it comes in formal, inherited, practical, or traditional forms, and whether it comes in the form of a man or a woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kriss, for that presentation. I'm just switching over the computer now. So our third speaker, in addition to being my co-author on the Community Adaptation and Viability chapter in the Arctic Human Development Report, along with Greta Hovosrud, is Rasmus Ole Rasmussen. Here we go. Rasmus is a senior research associate at Nordregio in Norway and an associate professor at Roskilde. And he will be speaking on gender perspectives on path dependency. So please welcome Rasmus.
My starting point is, biased in the sense that the whole framework for this session is on regional socio-economic development. And in this context, I would like to focus on the gender perspectives of path dependency, because I think, the last speaker showed how to avoid path dependency and break out of these constraints. And hopefully, if I can make this work, I'll take off with a few slides on what are the regional paths. Well, first of all, this map shows the settlement structure around in the Arctic, and the colors indicate whether the places are growing or declining in size. And as you can see, all the red spots, small spots, are the small settlements, basically eventually disappearing, while you have the larger spots, especially on the western hemisphere, with growing centers of population. And this has to do with the urbanization process. There was a lot emphasis on the fact that more than half of the population in the world are living in urban centers. Well, in the case of the Arctic, it's much more than 50% that are concentrated in urban centers. And for some reason that I might touch upon, this seems to be attractive in many ways, and especially attractive for women. And again, this is just repeating what has been mentioned earlier today, that there is a huge outmigration of women from the Arctic, or in a few situations positioning themselves in urban centers, which seems to be similar attractive as the outside world. And you should be aware of that this doesn't show the exact percentages or distribution between males and females, but according to the national averages. I would be sure that some of the persons from Russia would object to this situation because they know that parts of the Arctic in Russia is inhabited by older women, but compared again to the national situation in Russia, this is more or less the situation. And the reason for this structure and for this process of development is more or less shown here in this table. It's based on surveys from Greenland on mobility structure and mobility development. And as you can see, there are basically a neutral part where these issues are more or less equal among males and females, while there is a clear male dominance when it's about career opportunities. Partner education, you might think, well, why do males think about that? Well, in the case of Greenland, you'll see in a moment, fisheries is extremely depending on educated women having a steady income in order to make the fisheries go ahead, get money for investments. So it's, of course, a concern for the fishermen to have, well, let's say, wealthy wives providing input to their industry. While when we move down here, we get to the section where there is a clear female dominance and, well, on one hand, improved leisure time options. And leisure time in this connection is cultural events, cultural activities, while they are not really concerns for the males. Then better education options for children. Very, very few males think that it's an important issue. Family relation and family matters. And first of all, better own education options. We had some figures a moment ago on the education level. And if you take it along the Nordic countries, approximately 65 to 70% of all persons pursuing higher education are females, and the remaining part are males. These nice fishermen are living in the village and has not got any opportunity to leave the place, simply because they cannot afford it. They cannot get jobs outside their traditional activities, and there are no women they can marry, even they look nice and friendly. They are not there, and of course it limits their opportunities. They might think about shifting from local small-scale fisheries to large-scale fisheries, but they are not able to do that. Instead, they might go to the local burger bar and join their friends for a burger and Coke and flashing their new equipments in order to show that they have some kind of status in the place they're living in. In case of women and girls, the situation is more or less the opposite. They are looking for opportunities to meet, to discuss, to have good ideas of future development. They might definitely think about the outside world, for instance, as they have done here in this nice house. And if they want to flash something, equipment, this is what they might do. No fancy cars, no, well, important things to show positions, except a brand new bike shouldn't be stolen. So this is what they are thinking about. And Tine will be presenting tomorrow, but I hope she, as the rector for the University in Greenland, can correct me if I'm wrong. But this is the graduates from 2012 from the university. And of course, you start looking, oh, there are males. Well, yeah, one of them is a teacher. So this year, all the graduates basically are women. Instead, the men are here, not necessarily because they want to hide, but because this is one of the few options they have. This is in connection with the establishment of hydropower stations in Greenland. Or they may think big, but unfortunately there are no options like that presently in Greenland. So there are limitations to what they can and what they can't. And this is important to reflect on when we are talking about changes, that the role of relations to community and defining what is a community. And there are differences here between the male and the female perspectives on what is actually a community. In the male situation, the community is the village. For the females, it's including also the world outside the community, and especially the question of how to qualify to connect to the world outside the community. The discourses in the 4 municipalities in Greenland could be, well, illustrated by this, because if we start from the north, well, in this municipality, 19 men and 2 women have been elected recently for the local government. Moving south, well, this is 5 to 10. Moving down south, it's 8 to 9, and only the Kommunegrafik Sævarsdóttir, we have a situation where there are a majority of women, and at the same time also the mayor being a female. So when you approach these different communities or municipalities, well, the discourses are extremely different, and it's very difficult to, well, reach some of the goals that has been taken forward during today, in especially in the north, while it's much easier down south. And some of the, let's say, outside municipalities are envying the central part for the opportunities that it creates. The challenge in this connection is to what extent are these discourses influencing people, or especially children living in the communities. Well, in 1998, the first internet cafe was established in a village in Inuit. And what happened with the use of this internet access? Well, the boys played games, and usually violent war games, while the girls communicated, in some cases between each other, but eventually going, let's say, global in their approach and looking for, well, what are people doing elsewhere? We did a couple of surveys in South Greenland in 2005, 2008, and 2014. And this illustrates some of the major outputs in 2008, namely for the boys, well, 11% would stay in the village in the municipality, 38% would stay in town in the municipality, which means that approximately half of the boys would like to stay. Looking at the girls' side, well, more than half, almost 60%, would either move to Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, or would be looking for global opportunities. Less than 1% of the girls stated that they would actually like to stay in a village in the municipality. And there were more on the questionnaires mentioning that they would like to go to New York than those who liked to stay in the villages. It's, of course, time-consuming and difficult to do that kind of measurements, doing questionnaires and interviews. It's rewarding, but at the same time also time-consuming. So the social media turns out to be an opportunity to look more into depth of these questions. This is a little more than 1 million tweets that took place during the last 3 months. And, well, you can see the distribution throughout the Arctic. We have collected them and also narrowed in on more local issues. And, of course, knowing that we were heading for Iceland, looking into what takes place. And, of course, Reykjavik is the area with the highest number of tweets. And you can see, well, looking at the colors, I didn't mention that before, but it's subdivided in, let's say, almost nothing, a little more, and very many, and huge amounts. And in this case, those of you who are familiar with Reykjavik will know where to go if you want to find the persons who have been contributing to this summary. And actually, I can give you the exact address, zooming here. And what do they tell? Well, they are very gendered. Of course, more than a million tweets. It's impossible that all of them contains usable content. A lot of them, maybe you saw, I had tweets spread out of the inland ice in Greenland, and of course, there are not many people living there. It's the observation post for monitoring the ice that use the same path as the tweet path. And the same goes for buoys in the ocean, but also these equipment that you put on whales and seals in order to monitor the way they move. Each time they come to this surface, they send a tweet, which interferes, of course, with all the other tweets. I have not done any statistics on that part of the tweeting. But the point here is that the discourses reflected in tweets are very gendered. The males typically say, well, what can I do? What have I accomplished? And how do I compare to the others? While the females, well, what can we do? What can we accomplish together? And how, where, and when can we interact again? So the whole approach in communicating is different. And the final focus here will be in the fact that when we are talking about Greenland, there is what's called an Arctic diaspora, the fact that today 25% of Greenlandic females are living in Denmark, and 20% of the males are living in Denmark. And of course, there are huge interaction. And you know, the Jewish saying, well, next year, Jerusalem. In this case, the saying is, well, next year, Tivoli in Copenhagen. And first, in August every year, approximately between 100,000 and 200,000 persons who have some relations to Greenland in one way or the other are meeting in order to, well, to communicate and exchange opinions. So this illustrates what is, I think, the major point in my presentation here, namely that we cannot look at individuals. We need to see persons in life cycles that are shaping the regional demographic options, and that choice of residence used to be a once-in-a-lifetime decision, but it's not that anymore. It's influenced very much by what takes place in the interaction across the oceans. And therefore, well, these are the conclusions that I have included, and I would like to put forward that this is something that should be brought to Arctic Council. Instead of looking on climate, this and that and the other, look into, well, what are people in the Arctic doing and how are they doing? And that's all.
Thank you, Rasmus, for that great presentation. So I'm going to invite all of the speakers, as well as our 3 additional panelists, to please come up to the panel. And while they're doing that, I've been asked to remind the audience that, because there's some new people that might have come during the lunch hour, that we do have someone here who has an extreme allergy to peppermint. So if you could avoid peppermint tea, gum, breath mints, those things, that would be really great. Thank you. So we have 3 new people joining us here at the panel. We have Janne Sigurdsson from Alcoa Fjardaál here in Iceland. Janne, she's here. Líneik Anna Sævarsdóttir, the MP of the Progressive Party here in Iceland, and Marit Pedersen, Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise here in Norway. So we'd like to invite our three speakers that have joined us if they'd like to say a few words before we'll take questions. So Janne, we'll have you go first.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me here today. It's really a great pleasure being here with you today. It's very important issues that we're discussing here. First of all, today and at least until Sunday, I'm the managing director of an aluminum smelter, which is here in the east coast of Iceland. Believe me, when we talk about remote areas, well, this is the place where I live, and it's a great place to be. But it was, however, a challenge, and it was so much of a challenge that politicians started to pick in Alcoa some 9 or 10 years ago and said, you need to help us out here because we're missing people. As Rasmus was explaining before, there were too many people leaving the east of Iceland, and something needed to be done for creating job opportunities. And this is, I guess, the reason why I'm here today, because it was very clear for Alcoa from day one that here was something that we needed to have a look at, and that was gender equality. In fact, gender equality, I would like to stop with those two words. We started talking about gender equality some 9 or 10 years ago, and in Alcoa, both here in the east coast of Iceland, but also globally, we have started instead talking about diversity. And even here on the last couple of years, it's diversity and inclusion. And for me, that is quite different because gender equality talks about I, as a woman, I have the same rights. Well, in Alcoa, we've turned it around and say, we need to do really well. And in order to do really well, we need the best of the people. So when we look at getting the best of the people, we need to look at those talents in all the people around us. So we don't exclude and don't look at the females around us. We need all kinds of talents. So basically, the reason why we look at diversity and inclusion, the reason for that is that, well, it's just basically very good business. It makes sense. We want to be social conscious, and we are. But when we talk about diversity and inclusion, well, it's just because it really makes sense. And when I talk about inclusion, what I mean there is that it's not only a matter that we want females in our organization. We don't just invite them to the party, but we really want to dance with the women, and we want men and women to dance together. I've heard a couple of half sentences today that mining and I guess smelting would very easily be a part of that business area. Well, that's for men. Yep, that might be the case today. But why is that the case? Why don't we change that? It's not written in any Bibles or any big books that this is how it should be forever. Let's change that, and let's work together on changing that fact. It was clear for us when we needed to employ 500 employees, and that's only, 8 years ago. Well, we needed to look for all the talents that was around us. And it's not something that comes easily, and I'm certainly not saying that we are where we want to be today, but at least today we have 22% of females in our organization, but the goal has been from day one that we want to have 50%. And we're giving ourselves a few more years to go there because it takes time, but we will get there. But it will take some more years before we're really getting there. But going there, it's constant work, and you can't sleep for half a year. If you sleep for half a year and don't do anything actively to getting the females to work in organizations like this, well, then you start going down in percentages. We've done that, so I talk about experience here. So it's something that we need to work on every single day, and we need to work actively in getting and opening up the organization and showing people how it is to work with us. Well, it's only 46% of our employees that has only a primary school education. That's a lot of really tough jobs. I would really like to quote Freya. She was one of our operators in the cast house. We now are sponsoring her. She's taking a technical degree in the University of Reykjavik. But remember, she said once, well, I might be an operator, and people say I can't do that because I'm a woman. Well, believe you me, you need brain as well. So maybe she was indicating that female have more brain. I won't go that part. But it's really a question about you need all kind of competence, and we need different people working together. In our organization, we don't have a diversity and inclusion committee, but we have a family committee, and they're responsible for our strategy and policy for diversity and inclusion. They make the strategy, and we as management team, we agree and have a lot of discussions with them. And I visited the team that were sitting down one day and asked one of their male operators, because of course it's partly 50% male and 50% female in this committee, and I asked the guys around the table and said, why is this so important? Maybe I was turning it around, but I would like to hear from them why it was important. Eli, he's probably 52 or 53 years old. He's always worked in very male-dominated industries, very much on trucks, etc. He looked at me and said, have you ever worked in an organization where there's only males? It is just so much more fun to go to work when we are, in my team, he said, we're 40% women. And that's true, not because female are more fun, we are, but it's more a question about that when we're different, when we are short and tall, and when we're slim and fat, and when we are male and female, when we work together as different people, that's when the fun comes. And we know what fun means. That's more business. So I think that's what it's all about. Thank you.
That's great. I agree. Girls are more fun. Okay. So we'll have some comments now from Líneik Sævarsdóttir, the MP Progressive Party here in Iceland.
Hello. Can you hear me well? I'm very glad to be here today and be able to learn from everyone that has spoken here. I also come from the east part of Iceland. I was raised there, but in a different community from where I live now. And my daughters actually have had summer jobs at the smelter. So I can confirm there are women working there. I am new at this talk and thinking about the Arctic, how things are in the Arctic. I've been looking at this for over a year now, and to my surprise, I find and relate very well to what we have been talking about here today and what I have learned earlier about how development in the Arctic, we can learn from that, both for rural Iceland and for the Iceland as a whole. And I did want to share some thoughts that I've had during those talks here today. I think we always come to the problem how gender segregated the labor market is. It's for the whole of Iceland and for the Arctic. We have done much better of encouraging women to go into traditional men careers than the other way around. We might even have narrowed the choice that men have today, both for education and when they choose jobs. So we need to encourage men to go into traditional female sectors, but I also believe we need to do much better in education and innovation in education on the traditional male sectors in the Arctic. I think that's a very important issue. Because when it comes to it, it's all about how we can integrate the traditional living in the Arctic and the new jobs and development, so the traditional living can develop as well as the new sectors that are coming in, mining or whatever else there is. Because what is the point living in the Arctic if we can't enjoy nature, and everything that the Arctic has to offer to us in daily life. Thank you.
Thank you. And our third panelist, Marit Helene Pedersen from the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise.
Thank you very much. I like the way you pronounce my name.
Probably terrible, but thank you.
No, it's nice. Thank you for inviting me to this interesting conference. I will speak about how businesses in the county of Finnmark perceive economic development in the light of gender equality. Gender equality have in many years become part of the Norwegian identity. Over the years, we have seen data published describing equal opportunities throughout Norway, region by region. From this data, 2 regions emerge as having the best statistics in terms of equal opportunities. I'm so sorry for my voice. These are Central Eastern Norway and North Norway, in particular the counties of Finnmark and Troms. This is a clear sign that men and women are more equal in these regions than anywhere else in the world. And Finnmark County is currently experiencing a population boost and a positive development in business and commerce. And the 3 regional centers, Alta, Hammerfest, and Kirkenes, have the highest rate of growth. But a number of smaller municipalities, however, can also report an increase in population and growth in business and commerce. This population increase is mainly attributed to people immigrating from abroad to work. On a national scale, the highest rate of occupational immigration is found in Finnmark, and Finnmark also has the highest rate of employment, close to 70% among these immigrants. The main sectors experiencing growth are the oil and gas sector with the supplier industry, building and construction, fishing, and in particular aquaculture and salmon farming, tourism, commerce, and services. At the same time, Finnmark has the highest growth rate for knowledge-intensive industries and cultural enterprises in Norway, and these businesses mainly employ women. We are now experiencing a situation where the labor market has a record high rate of demand for manpower in the county, and this is very new for Finnmark. There is a notable demand for qualified, competent manpower with specialized training or higher education who can meet the needs of an industry that is increasingly diversified. Despite the high level of equal opportunities in the region, there remains a gender divide within business and employment, as many have said before me, where women and men continue to take traditional career paths. The percentage of women in employment is high, 80%, but men dominate the primary industries and mining, while women are more prevalent in the tertiary industries in general and within education, health and social service in particular. However, it's interesting to note that the new industries emerging in Finnmark are equally attractive to both male and female, as you said. There has been a substantial increase in the number of applicants for petroleum-related educational programs on all levels. The number of students of both sexes choosing process technology alone at Hammerfest Upper Secondary School has been in double figures recently, and these students have been on apprenticeships with Statoil since. They are now working with the production of liquid cool gas for the global market, an industry that alone generates some 15 to 18 billion Norwegian kroner each year to the Norwegian funding. And I think it's about 27% of these nearly 400 people are women. The stereotype woman from Finnmark is strong and plays an active role in politics and in work. She has a strong position in the villages, in the communities. There's a high percentage of women in politics and other aspects of community life, with a total of 42.5% of women having roles on local county council, only beaten by Oslo with 45%. In terms of employment, 67.5% of women work in the public sector and 32% only work in private industry. It's particularly gratifying to see that the percentage of women in executive position is as high as 40.2% in Finnmark, compared to the average figure in Norway, which is 35%. So I think 40% is a very nice figure. What's more, the salaries earned by women and men are much more equal in Finnmark than in the rest of the country. We can see that young students are now choosing to study for careers in new industries, and those who originally moved away from Finnmark to find work in other parts of Norway or abroad are returning home. I meet men and women who successfully incorporate the best aspects of their rural culture and their close relationship with nature into a new, modern and urban lifestyle, which we can see and even the smallest municipalities and villages. And they are able to exploit both domains in order to increase value allocation, improve quality of life and well-being. And these factors make them stay in Finnmark. I would go so far as to say that the modern citizen of Finnmark has an urban working life and lifestyle in an isolating northern environment, thanks to his or her Arctic expertise. I've seen and noted that a number of research projects in this area express considerable concern when it comes to the gender balance in North Norway, as industry continues to grow in the region. But we'd like to counter this by confirming that the young people in Finnmark seems to show an increasing awareness of both education, gender, and lifestyle that incorporates both the new and the urban, and the traditions of Finnmark, as I said earlier. The features of this new urban lifestyle within the very, very small communities of Finnmark are of huge interest and should be the subject of new research on this area, to my friends. But questions to be addressed still is how to increase women working in private sector, how to bring the boys and men into the gender discussions, and finally I have a global question: how to deal with the beauty and body ideal for the young women. I think this is the most, what should I say, complex and difficult question. The advertising and the film industry and the music industry create some monsters of young girls. This is my personal meaning, the last one. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a great provocative question also to end on there. And we've heard some really great points and questions from all the speakers. So the floor is open now for anybody who has comments or questions, and we have some good time. We have almost 30 minutes. So over here on this far side, I'll keep track, so the hands are popping up. If you could just stand up, I think would be...
I'm going to...
Oh, you sit? Okay.
It's all right. Is this on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Valerie Alia from Toronto, Canada. That last comment, I think, sparked something because it connects with what I wanted to ask. And I think that we have been hearing a lot about numbers today. And it's very important to know the numbers and look at them. But I think there's an underlying assumption that simply fixing the numbers is going to make gender equality. And I'd be interested in responses about workplace harassment, for example. Maybe it's more fun to have more women, but maybe not all the women are having more fun. So putting women in so-called non-traditional positions also adds a vulnerability factor. So I'd just be interested in putting that into the mix and asking for some responses about the more qualitative aspects of this.
Okay, does anyone the panel want to comment? And then we have a comment down here also.
Love to comment on this one if I can. In fact, first of all, everybody needs to have fun. No question about it. And we have had men and we have had females that did not think it was fun working at the smelter. So they found different jobs. But believe you me, there are lots of female that loves working in a smelter. And these are the ones that we want working for us. With regards to sexual harassment, it is always something that you need to be very much aware of. In particular, if you want female, as I think we all want in our organizations. And in fact, the family committee I was talking about before is responsible for our procedures on how to tackle sexual harassments. And this is something that we take very seriously. And I know of several examples where we have had to fire people, we have had to give warnings, but it's always tackled like if you go to the police with it, it's investigations, it's interviews, and it's taken very, very serious. If you want females there, you need a clean culture. And when you have a clean culture with regards to this, that's when men and female think it's fun working there. So you need to take it very seriously. So it's a very good point.
So Líneik and then President Helene has a comment.
Because I want to only continue about that. I have experience from the two sectors of the Finnish society. One was policemen, and the other one was the army. And with the policemen, I know it also from my own security, because before I became a president, so all the security persons were men. And then I wanted to have a women. And in the beginning, it was, how could I say, not too much welcome. But after a while, everybody said that it's much more fun. And it didn't mean the sexual harassment. It means only that it brought a broader scope of the personalities and a way also for men to behave. They said that it has also the, how could I say, they have to change a little bit their behavior. In the army, the response was first that there is no sexual harassment, it's all no discrimination and so, but little by little it came out that there were certain districts where it was much, much worse. But it took time before the women could say it more openly that it can happen. But again, they said that the results of the both men and women in the working places became better when there were men and women. I don't know all the reasons, but it seemed to work in such a way that they used exactly the same words. It's great fun.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I think it's very important to be aware of the possibility of sexual harassment. And I wanted to mention, I attended a conference last year where there were some men that had entered traditional women workplaces. And they had an unbelievable experience. Because there is also somehow things have to be changed there. The culture of the workplace was not friendly at first. And it was both that the men were supposed to do some things because they were men, move chairs around or tables or whatever, but also when it came to sexual things.
Yeah.
I also would like to thank you for the question. And as my question about owning the future, I think that question you asked is also very complex. Starting off by saying that I'm a relatively young woman. I have experienced many situations where I've been treated differently because I'm a woman and that I'm relatively young. And I've sometimes thought also that it's not necessarily only a question of gender, but it's also a question about feminine versus masculine values. And I've been sitting on a lot of boards and I've seen the techniques that are used to sort of suppress the feminine properties or values, either if they come from a man or a woman. If you use many words, for instance, that's like, it's not efficient enough. And it doesn't matter what you're supposed to say. You say it you use too much time, and then it's not as interesting. And that's what I think is very important with the he for she campaign, that not only that male or men should be allowed into the gender, the battle for gender equality, but also that both women and men should be allowed to be carriers of both feminine and masculine values, and that men should be allowed to talk about feelings and presentations in forums like these, and that women also should be allowed to talk about numbers, for instance, because it's sort of this mix of the values or properties. And when it comes to SALT, it was very interesting that when we established our company, the media were focusing that it was like girl entrepreneurs starting this company. And I'm like, oh my. It's like, I'm not a girl. For the first thing, I'm a woman. And the other thing is that I wanted to be seen for my competence and engagement and not my gender. But that's when it becomes tricky, because I'm also a feminist, and I also would like to embrace both, to say, yes, I'm a woman and I'm an entrepreneur and that. And actually, we have done started to contribute to make the gender balance the other way. So we now have, in the female company of SALT, hired a man.
Okay, there was a question with the glasses. Yeah.
Hello, Kristin Magnusson is my name. I represent the gender equality group of the University of Akureyri. Interesting enough, 2/3 of the students are females. But I have another question. I work at the Icelandic Institute of Natural History. I'm a biologist and also professor at the university. I teach biotechnology. My research is on genetic variation and applied biotechnology. And I would like to ask you, Kriss, it's a great company you founded, and I think it has relevance to us in Iceland as well. Let's say I'm a businessman, and I just fly to your region and take some lichens, I take some algae or swamp, take it with me, I sequence it, I isolate some valuable chemicals and stuff, start a company and make $1 million. What would you say about that? How are you ready for such intrusion? I think this is a very relevant question among indigenous people all over the northern, in the Arctic, and northern communes. I mean, one thing is mining, but this is different kind of mining.
Well, that is an interesting question. And then I could talk as a highly educated woman. But I think that in general, when we talk about owning your competence, I didn't have time to elaborate on that in my presentation, but when it comes to a place like Lofoten, for instance, it's a long tradition where people outside Lofoten has been doing research on Lofoten, both for nature and marine resources and the people living there. And I think it's crucial that we have the competence within our community about our own community, our own resources, and our future. And that's where we're trying to contribute, even though we're still small. And I think that is related directly to your question, because I know of bioprospectation, is that the English word for it? And I think that's an interesting and very important way forward for the northern communities in Norway, because the coastline is just full of these opportunities. But then I think this is a global question as well, and that how do we secure that the ownership of that resource also gives values to the local communities? And I think it's very interesting, and I think we would need sort of, I don't know, a 1-week intensive conference to discuss that matter. But I have seen several places along the northern Norwegian coast that also, it's very small communities, and of course you don't have all the competence that is required to tackle this future where everybody is looking north, and all these enterprises that are super professional and know all the legislations and everything. They know how to find their way in the law, and I don't know if they're deliberately taking advantage of it, but I've seen some very ugly examples on how they have been able to get hold of resources like wind, for instance, where the local community has nothing left afterwards. They didn't know how to secure their rights in the process. And I think that's an important thing that all of us have to be aware of in the future in the north. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was at least a comment. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sole. I'm a member of the City Council here in Akureyri. We will be starting a new committee on innovation and entrepreneurship, probably in the beginning of the next year. So I was just wondering, do you have any advice for us? At least 2 or 3 of us are sitting here that will be a part of this committee, so I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Elisabet.
I don't know what you're going to do on this committee, but when I look at this congregation, to put it that way, it's the reverse number of men and women when I go to business conferences. And I strongly believe that you need to have both men and women on such a committee, and that you equally look at different industries as all contributing to the economy. Because I have been working a lot with research on innovation policy programs in Norway. And it is an understanding of innovation as being technological, patents, it's the sexy things, while innovation happens in the public sector, in services, in tourism, without being counted or looked at. So I think you need to have a quite broad perspective on what are different industries and entrepreneurs' contribution to the economy. It is crucial to have the whole, and the more rural, the more regional, it's really crucial to have the whole spectrum of industries and also regard them as important. So looking, not counting hairdressers, it's a stupid thing because they really are important as well in a local economy as well as in more global economy. So that's one of you have to join and have different parties in such committees.
Anyone else from the panel? Entrepreneurship and innovation, any comments? No? Yeah? Okay. Another question? Or comment? Well, I'll take, oh yeah, go ahead. There's a microphone, I think, right, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Þóra Pedersdóttir, and I live here, but I am a postdoc at the Arctic University of Norway in Tromsø. And when Kriss was talking, I came to think of, I asked or wanted to ask a question in to the earlier panel, but because time ran short, I wasn't allowed to. And I wanted to point it to I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Eva Maria Svensson, yes? Because you were talking about whether gender equality should be one of the buzzwords of the kind of Arctic discourse. And you were talking about female and male values. And for example, women using possibly too many words to express their opinions or whatever. And I think maybe that's exactly what we need in the, the Arctic discourse is more words, because many of the buzzwords that you mentioned in your list of buzzwords that are actually used in the Arctic discourse are exactly that, and that's what the problem is, that they're buzzwords with very little content or very little debated content maybe. So so I wanted to, like for example, economic stability, sustainable development and stuff like that. I mean, what's behind these concepts, if we can call them that? And for me, for someone who is actually thinking about gender equality, where gender equality is kind of on the top of my head, or if you can say that, then gender equality is actually a very crucial part of sustainable development and economic stability. So I think maybe what is needed is more words, and that we actually ask politicians or people in ruling positions to actually say what they mean by if gender equality is not mainstreamed in your program on sustainable development, then how do you actually define sustainable development or economic stability or so forth? Thank you. It's more of a comment, sorry, than a question.
Did you want to comment since she was... Yeah. Yeah, we still have time. Right behind you here, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I have several comments, but the main thing was, I think, when I studied how the public governance, the public governing bodies represent themselves, the buzzwords are signs for me to understand what are they concerned about. I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing to have buzzwords, but I don't think you mentioned that. You meant that. No. Yeah. 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 So, of course, I agree with you that gender equality is not talked about as much as it should be. So let's talk more about it, but it mustn't not stay being a buzzword. We must, of course, fill it with content as well.
Anyone on the panel want to comment? We'll have Elisabet, and then you can bring your new point.
Well, I've been studying policies on development of business and business policies, and I think you got to go from talk of it to action. And action is, for instance, priorities of means of money. It's showing what you really mean. And I also believe that it's very important that leadership, whether it's political or within business or public sector, shows with action what they really put behind the words. So when you talk about gender equality, for instance, in academia, you need to show that, okay, we're supporting women who want to become professors, for instance. We do these and these and these things. It's not only talking. Or you can reverse that and say, okay, when we are worried about boys not getting through the educational system, we're not only worried, we do this and this and this to get them through. So so we know that they have the education they need for the society we want to build. So I think it's actions that matters, and you should actually look at that. But it's, of course, the wording and looking at what is prioritized when you talk, it's also interesting, at least when you're a researcher.
Did you have a comment on this? No, next to you here. Yeah.
This one, but I think in general, my name is Mervi Heikkinen and I come from University of Oulu, Finland. And since my educational background is in education, I always view issues, discussions related to gender equality also from education perspective. And when we are talking about gender equality, yes, we need concepts and we need contents behind of those concepts, and we need knowledge. That's what we have been discussing today. But do we really take care of the knowledge that it doesn't just come when we go to the labor force or when we take this member of parliament position or some other decision-making position? It's something that has to have enough time to get cultivated, and I'm really calling after like citizenship education that includes gender equality as a knowledge base, but also skill. We need knowledge, but we also need skills how to participate to society as citizens. And gender equality is also skill. It is not something that we somehow inherit. We need to learn and study about it. And it happens, I think, in public schools. And it should be part of the curriculum. And when we are talking about future challenges, so from the point of education, I'm really concerned how we are going to have this gender equality included in our Arctic education curriculum, starting from the kindergarten, early childhood education, compulsory school, and so forward in higher education. What happens in women's gender, men's studies units in universities currently because of the lack of resources and etc. So I would like you to comment on this topic, education.
Thank you. So we'll take comments from the panel, and then there's another question over here. Yeah, Rasmus.
Yeah. Well, that was more or less the issue I tried to emphasize in connection with the surveys that we have been doing and the interviews we have been doing with youth, both in connection with the introduction of internet, but especially through the education system. What are the youngsters brought up to believe that is right? And I think in this connection, the map I showed of Greenland, the focus is extremely different between the 4 municipalities, and therefore what they are brought up to believe that should be correct differs. And if you look into details on what happens in the 4 municipalities, it's quite obvious that the major municipality with Nuuk as a center, of course it's a center for Greenland, but at the same time it's also there you have much more openness towards focusing on the content of education, and in this connection definitely also the content relates to gender issues, while up north well, it's an interesting place to go for anthropologists who want to know about how things were, but not to look into, well, how are they going to be?
Kriss, do you want to make your comment?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm commenting as on my personal behalf. I have a daughter, Saga, who's 4.5 years old, and she goes in the kindergarten. So I'm very concerned about this all the time, since I don't know if I'm a feminist. I also lack this word of like the equal for both sexes. But I have 2 examples from Norway that I really think of a lot. And once when I was living in Tromsø, I was in a huge mall, and I observed 2 parents with a boy. He was maybe 4 years old, and it was a big day for him because he was getting his new bike, and he wanted the pink one. And then I heard his parents saying that, no, you can't have that, you have to have the blue one. I was like, seriously? And then it's a kindergarten example from Norway that has gotten a lot of attention, because It was a kindergarten that sent out an invitation for the children in the kindergarten to their parents, saying that they would have a spa day for the girls. And then it said, the boys will also have an alternative. And the question here, or what concerns me, is of course not the colors. My daughter can wear pink as much as she wants, but whenever she say that this is a girl color, I would say there's no such thing as a girl or a boy color. And it's not about the colors, it's about being indoctrinated from a very young age that there are certain traits that are suitable for a girl, and there are certain traits that are suitable for a boy. And maybe we need to start to educate the people that spend so much time with our children, that they are not taking those indoctrinated traits onwards.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, and I want to make sure, Líneik, you get your chance, and then the audience member, that will be our last question. So, Janne, do you want to just follow up?
Very quickly. Yeah. It's related to the skills that you mentioned before, because we know skills and knowledge, that all starts with interest. It starts with what color you want. It starts with if you want to have a screwdriver in your hand or you want something else. I think it's so vital what you mentioned, that we start from the kids when they're so young. When they're 15, 20, it's too late. We know that. Then you finish bringing your kids up. What you haven't done before that, it's too late. We need to start really young. And one of the things that we've decided to do next year, in fact, at the plant, because we need to get those young girls interested from preschool. So what we're going to do next year is, in fact, coming with, I know it's a simple example, but still, I think we need to be innovative in many ways. So we're going out and giving to all the preschools and kindergartens in the area, we're giving them a small coloring book. So what's in this coloring book? There are pictures of, for instance, male nurses, female carpenters. So mixing a little bit, not only that, but showing you can do both. So if you're a girl, you can stand with a screwdriver, or you can be a nurse, whatever you like. But it's not your gender that decides in which direction you're going. And I'm a very proud mother of one girl and one boy. And they're both training the same kinds of skills to be mechanics. And I'm very proud of my girl, and I'm very proud of my son as well. And that's what it's all about.
Oh,
okay.
Objection.
Please.
Okay, we have to get, Líneik has been waiting very patiently.
Yeah,
so.
I wanted to just comment on this. I think both the knowledge and skills are very important, and also the difference between there. And I think we have been putting some knowledge into our educational system, but maybe not as many skills. But it's also very important that we have some men in schools from kindergarten up. It's always, they're getting fewer and fewer men as being teachers.
The president would like to object, yes.
Never stop believing that adult education works. Nobody is too old for that. I mean that I have seen many, many grandfathers who have changed their opinion, and even sometimes the grandmothers. So it would be better to start, like you said. I fully agree. But if they have not got enough education in preschool education or at school or at the university, don't give up your hopes. You are never too old to work.
Okay, two last comments between you and coffee. Okay, Jon, and then, I'm sorry, I forget your name. Marit, yeah.
Yes.
First.
I want to emphasize on the courage of women. We often do not go into the most difficult leaderships. We don't go into financial sector. We don't go into the really heavy duties in the society. And why don't we do that? It's a kind of question of courage. You have to do it, and you have to, what is it? When you take a strong leadership, as our former president here, you have to do it all the way. You have to work a lot, and you have to, it's a lot of other things that you can't do all the time, and you have to do really go into your work. So I I'm looking for the discussion of the courage and to take the real hard positions in society. Until we do that, we are not equal gendered.
Thank you, Marit. Okay, very last comment.
Okay, just from Ljunggren, one of the organizers of this conference. I just want to object and support. Support first the using more words to describe terms. Another one to object a little bit to you, Janne, for saying it's not your gender that matters. I think what we need to do actually, and need to sort of get the policy community to sort of indulge better in, and that is to think about gender as a cultural social construct, not always be seeing men versus women, men and women together, the two genders. We have multiple gender identities, and the fact that a new report from Nordic ministers is called Gender Equality, the Nordic Way, does not mention homosexual, heterosexual, trans, bisexual. It may have to do with the fact that that is just, well, they take it for granted that there are gay marriages and these rights. I had a conversation with Helene last night about this, and we came to the conclusion that in fact that it does go together, not only tolerance but celebration of, and I heard you talk about this, of diversity, celebration of it, not just tolerating gender crossing. We are beyond thinking about gender crossing. There are different types of masculinities and femininities, and obviously, especially in regions that do not tolerate these third, fourth, fifth gender, as maybe people will identify themselves as, they also have more problems with women versus men inequality, because these more complicated way of looking at gender, especially sort of at the margins in between, people who identify with both, for example, they actually have a better ability to accept men and women in whatever roles they want to take, how they want to dress, how they want to work, what they want to work, define their work culture together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will reconvene at 3:30. Thank you, everyone, all of the panelists and speakers, for some great discussion.